Hey, welcome to Gain.
Yes, hello. Welcome to Gain, the Generative AI News Rundown, the weekly live show from Voicebot.ai and Synthesia. I'm a Voicebot head writer, Eric Schwartz. Brett Kinsella is my usual co-host, but he's currently flying back from London. So instead, I'm very happy to welcome our producer up on stage, Andrew Herndon. Thanks for jumping in, Andrew.
Hey, Eric, great to be here. Happy to join in when
Yes, normally
necessary. So,
an invisible presence, but glad you can actually be on stage this week.
yeah.
And if you are watching right now on LinkedIn or on YouTube, feel free to say hi. Be sure to ask any questions, share any comments you might have as we go through some of the biggest news this week about generative AI, synthetic media, and all the exciting stuff. As usual, there's a lot to get through, and we'll do our best to hit all the big stuff this week. So
Mhm.
why don't we just jump right into it with one of the many big stories this week from OpenAI.
Yep.
That being
OpenAI
the
personalizes ChatGPT with a new custom instructions feature. So, Eric, tell us about what
yes.
they are doing.
Yeah, this is an exciting addition. OpenAI has obviously been at the forefront of attention and interest with these generative AI chatbots and ChatGPT, obviously specifically. But the new custom instructions feature essentially personalizes ChatGPT from conversation rather than having to constantly explain in every new conversation who you are or the kind of format that you want ChatGPT to respond. It will actually allow you to explain that you're in a family of four, or that you live in a certain area, and when you ask it questions, that you want to have the response come in the form of bullet points or to be explained in a way that is useful for people who maybe don't understand technical details of coding so much. So it's a way to really make ChatGPT fit your personality and your background. So it's and a way to carry that on in between every conversation. So it's a way for OpenAI to really encourage people to keep using ChatGPT rather than feeling like they have to tediously start over with every conversation. So I can see the appeal. What about you, Andrew? Is this something you would want
Yeah.
to
So,
give the?
when I think about it, I think, obviously, the easier you can make it for people, the better it's going to be. And so, as we've seen a few weeks ago, we talked about a small traffic drop in the use of OpenAI, which may or may not coincide with the summer. Also, the
Mhm.
you know the new effects of something new and shiny, not as new. But if it's easier for people not to have to say every single time that they want it in this style of bullet point, to not have to put in all of that, to have some of these things predetermined for them, that would be certainly, as I think, obviously business people would like that, so you don't have to tell your new recruit every time that this is how I want my bullet points. But at the same time, will it be a game changer? We'll see. I think there's probably more advanced things that can come from it, and I don't think that just this time saving thing is going to be the biggest part.
True, although I will say when they launched it, they discussed how they've been getting a lot of comments about friction of having to start over every time you interact with ChatGPT. And for me, this feels very familiar to what Amazon has done and what Google has done with their voice assistants in terms of offering profiles so that not only will it recognize where you are, but it will recognize the kinds of things that you've expressed interest in
Mhm.
before, or um, the news or updates that you might want to hear even before you ask. I think there's sort of a convergence going on there in terms of creating a more useful personal assistant for your home or even
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, I mean, any way that you can circumvent the need for advanced prompting or use of agents or things like that, I think to do things that are probably mundane tasks that you do a lot, it's going to be helpful to lots and lots of people. So
Yeah, and we'll see how much this feature gets copied by some of the other chatbots out there. But I think it's at least as a test run, a good path for OpenAI to pursue.
yeah, I think so too. So that's, of course, one of the things that they are talking about this week, but there is some other stuff that they have not been talking about this week. So do you want to kind of chime in on that a little bit?
It's a great segue. Yes, that's because of course the customization is a new feature, but OpenAI has actually removed a different feature that they were testing out. In this case, a tool for measuring whether there is any whether any text has been written by AI. In this case, they launched it earlier this year, a way to a tool for testing, essentially, and measuring whether or not a text has been written by AI. And they had said at the time it wasn't very good. They said they were testing it out to see if they can make it better. Apparently, the answer is no, and they are just withdrawing it, and then probably going to pursue a different method. But I admire that they're being honest about how it failed, but I don't know how much is going to affect some of the other companies out there working on AI text detection.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a challenge, of course, to jump in there in any way, and I'm wondering if they just thought that perhaps it was maybe not even in their best interest to keep walking down that path, or at least publicly walking down that path. I wouldn't be surprised if they are just discontinuing their public occurrence of this for now, and perhaps it's going to an internal team to stay there for a little while.
True. But what's, it is interesting because, as I said, there are other companies out there working on AI text detection. Turnitin.com specifically has been bragging that educators can use their tool and detect when the text has been written by AI at a nearly 100% rate. And Brett in Synthedia went through and tested out some of these theories, and he was skeptical of whether Turnitin and some of these other tools can really do what they say, because there's really so much opportunity for a false positive, because the AI text writers are good enough to mimic people, and that means being good enough to fool less sophisticated tests, I guess I would say. So I don't know, but it's interesting that it feels like a rare admittance of failure by OpenAI.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, the real most important thing is how real can it be? How much can it do? Because we're going to see real world consequences from any kind of truth detector, right? So we've already seen some of these legal cases where, or not legal cases, but we've definitely seen universities failing students or potentially failing students, and I think it is now an illegal case. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe that it is in some kind of at least university level.
There's definitely
review,
been some definitely some fights on the academic level about whether AI text can be detected and what that means for academic integrity. But on the other hand, they did have a much more successful new launch besides the customization tool.
Oh yeah, so Brett reviewed on the Synthedia that we have a new Android app, and just surprise, it's really popular. Beyond I think even the iPhone app, which was popular, Android, of course, is just smashing it. So
yeah, when the iPhone ChatGPT app came out, everyone commented about how popular it was, how it was the fastest downloaded app in like over a year at that point. And yet here comes the Android app coming out, getting downloaded at 4 times the rate, hitting 1 million downloads in less than a day. It's really it's a testament to how much demand there still is for ChatGPT, despite, as we said, there's been a slight ticking down of visits to the website and possible usage. But I don't think the ChatGPT moment is, as Brett said, I don't think it's over yet. There's definitely going to be a lot of focus on what it can do and where people can access it for at least for a while to come.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. even though we've seen a traffic slowdown, we're going to see more adoption across a lot of different surfaces, a lot of different use cases that are going to incorporate the technology. So, I think having the standalone apps are, big plus. I don't know how much you use the iPhone version. I have an Android phone. I have the iPad version, and I do use it occasionally, but because it's on my iPad, I'm rarely using that to look things up. I'm usually using my laptop or my phone. But I think that I have not been one of those 1 million, but I will certainly download it on my phone. I have been using the Perplexity app on my phone a considerable amount. As you know, we like Perplexity, and actually Perplexity is in the news this week. So we're going to jump into that right now. Let me bring this up. So go ahead and take it away on this one, Eric.
So Perplexity, as I said, it's a popular alternative to OpenAI in terms of the AI model behind it, and certainly for text generation. But now Perplexity is going for a broader use cases, looking for the visual side of things. So the idea being that when you ask it a question, for instance, about a location or a person, not only will it pull up, not only will it answer the question and explain who they are, and Perplexity, of course, has been at the forefront of including links to where it's getting its information. But along with the text and the links, it's also going to pull photos. So if you playing around with it, I asked it if it knew who I was, if it knew who Brett was, if it knew who various famous celebrities were, and it regularly got it correct, even when it was people who are just sort of barely online. But it had not only what was interesting is sometimes the photos were more accurate than the text. Sometimes it would hallucinate a celebrity or not celebrity, honestly, but somehow would still manage to source their Instagram or their LinkedIn images correctly. So it was an odd mix of hallucination and accuracy. But I think that it's impressive that they're trying all these new things. And as the article I wrote says, another thing they did was last week we talked about Meta launched Llama 2, their new open source large language model. And within a day, Perplexity had grabbed access to it and put together a test chatbot using Llama 2. So instead of interacting with OpenAI's model or with Bard or whatever, it was talking to Llama 2 as though it were itself a chatbot. And it has some issues, but it really gave some immediate access, I think, to what Meta's doing, and it's hinted at where Meta's strength might be. And Perplexity is going to be a sort of interface for some of these other large language models. I think that's going to definitely play into their bid to compete with OpenAI and Google.
Yeah, I fully concur. Perplexity continues to impress me with everything that they're doing. I think that they have the best interface in general in terms of a UI experience versus the other language models that we've been working with and interacting with. Of course, they have a different purpose. They have. I think maybe we had Arvind for the Synthesia 3, and there's going to be some shorts that'll be coming out soon from that, some clips that we'll be releasing in the next few days. But I encourage everybody to check that out because he's very driven, and it seemed like everything he's doing, he really has a purpose. He's kind of focused on a goal, and I think that these other LLMs are the goal. Obviously, Perplexity is not a foundation model, but again, they're probably the best version of someone using it and a use case successfully. And of course, your use case is incredibly difficult. It's a challenging use case, and they're kind of knocking it out of the park considering that. I just want to remind everybody that this is the GAIN, the Generative AI News. And if you are here and you want to leave a comment, we would love to hear from you. My name is Andrew Herndon. I'm the Voicebot producer and also do a lot of work behind the scenes for other things in our research as well. So
yes, all of our lovely reports, Andrew helps put together. Yes, and I'm Eric Schwartz, the head writer for Voicebot, and I'm usually here with Brett, but Brett is flying back from a conference actually, so he'll be back next week. But yeah,
Yes.
of course, there's still plenty to discuss. Hardly hardly the end of the week's news.
Yep.
And yeah, speaking of models, yeah, this is StabilityAI, famous for Stable Diffusion, of course, and now putting out a new, for general issue, a new model, the Diffusion XL 1.0. It's more powerful, more efficient in terms of the power of the computing power it needs. It's StabilityAI has been working really hard to really embed itself everywhere when it comes to, especially for the image generation, but LLMs in general. And I think that they're sort of on this steady path of making it so that even if they're not going to be the dominant name in conversations like OpenAI, they're still going to be they still can't be ignored. They still have to be discussed, and they were well ahead of the game on open sourcing these models compared to Meta. So it's just another sign that the market is not closed yet. It's certainly not done coming up. The competition has not ended between these companies. There's not just the one choice and nothing else.
I agree. I as a producer for Voicebot, I make a lot of I generate a lot of images for use in these game cards and other things that we do. And of course, you generate images for the stories plenty of times too. So with what we were talking about with the ChatGPT, the thing I really wish for stability is for them to have something that's kind of like that allows me to kind of tell it what I want more easily, because the learning curve with stability is, I think, the biggest barrier to entry versus a Midjourney or something like that, which even if you don't describe what you want accurately and use a lot of artist names and various art terms, it'll give you something good. But I think that's still, in terms of the image generators, what stability is lacking is just some of the ease of use, and some of that is in their deeper apps. If you do the paid version, then you have a little bit more control, but it's not the same as having a better, more intuitive prompt interface. I think is what they really are lacking, and what I would love to see in their future endeavors. So.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd say, generally speaking, Stability AI has offered more control and more options for and more power for creating its images compared to, say, DALL-E from OpenAI. But in terms of which will come back with something more in line with what you're imagining from a very short description, generally it's going to be DALL-E over Stability's models. But if I want something very specific, or if I want to tweak and play with an existing image, then I feel like Stability AI's models are going to be more likely to eventually give me exactly what I want compared to some of the other models out there.
So do you think you use Stability more, or is it probably?
I tend to flip back and forth. I find that some of the tools out there that use Stable Diffusion, or are based on some of Stability's models, can be helpful. But in terms of, if I'm just trying out a maybe 8-word or 10-word phrase and seeing what art will come back, I do genuinely find that DALL-E 2 is almost always going to be quicker to come up with something that's good enough, even if it's not perfect. I would say.
Yeah, so I'm excited to dig in deeper. Obviously, it's only been my use is so limited at this point, but we do at Voicebot, we have been putting all of the image generators through their paces since November of last year. We have some prompts that we've been using and reusing and comparing. So I'm excited to put this through the paces that we have at Voicebot over the next few days and kind of see how it does truly compare to the other image generators in their current generations, because everything is evolving, and it's very exciting space. I can't wait to just keep going with these image generators. That love them or hate them, but they're here and they're awesome. They do some really powerful things. So
Yes, and of course, extending into video and so on. There's the synthetic media space has so much potential that it's still just barely being tapped. And I think that even these sort of quieter stories of Stability XL 1.0, it's a marker point for a much larger trend toward the use of these sorts of engines.
yeah, we did mention a little bit about students and some other things. And speaking of that, we have an article from Voicebot about Grammarly having some new features. So
yes, there was a generative AI bot for segues. Andrew, you would be the perfect trainer. Yes, Grammarly has been around for a long time. We wrote about several months ago when they first started incorporating generative AI tools into their features, so that instead of just telling you about misspellings or grammar mistakes or slight tweaks in wording, it could go beyond that and help you compose text and play around with tone and format and so on. And Grammarly, of course, is very popular with students who are writing papers, and they even have contracts with actual schools. So now they're going for a way of combining their generative AI tools with their sort of academic focus by, instead of just giving students a tool for writing a paper and saying, oh, turn in this generative AI text paper, the tools are designed to help students brainstorm ideas, to help them edit their papers and look for ways to strengthen them. And it's some pretty impressive stuff. I mean, taking it with a grain of salt, the demos I've seen, it does seem like the kind of helpful editor that every student, especially young student in college just starting out, could use. For instance, one of their examples was writing a persuasive essay, and Grammarly suggesting that you should proactively counter and refute any arguments against your paper if it doesn't notice any of them in your writing. I think that's really great. And honestly, the idea of just getting something on a page instead of just staring at a blank screen is an enormously helpful tool already, without actually going so far as to write the paper for the student. I think that's a nice middle ground to explore.
I think also an interesting thing here is the timing of this right now. It's the summer. This is the time, if you want teachers to incorporate something or to be able to feel comfortable incorporating something into their classroom, this is the time for them to actually sit down and play with it, figure out what it can and can't do, figure out what their personal take is going to be about these technologies. Because I think clearly every education system across the country is having probably significant internal discussions about generative AI and what their policies are and how they're going to incorporate. So I think it's smart of Grammarly to kind of drop this here in the middle of summer, like I said, where there's the chance for actual educators to come up with how this will fit into their style, as well as just, for Grammarly introducing this.
Yeah, and as we said, it dodges the whole debate of how do you tell when a student is using generative AI? How do you know when it's just when they're just writing a prompt in ChatGPT and turning in what comes out? There's very unlikely to be a perfect test, but if you can, I don't believe that most students want to cheat. So if you can offer them ways to exploit these kinds of technologies in a way that helps them without undercutting their education, I think that the vast majority of them will pick that option.
Right. And we also had another post on Voicebot about ways that generative AI is helping in the education field. So feel free to check that out if you're in the audience and you want to surf voicebot.ai. That's a great article for you to read too. But as far as with Grammarly, we talked about it earlier. It's funny because we talked about the ChatGPT or the OpenAI kind of sunsetting their writing, right? And now here's Grammarly kind of making a kind of a different play for what they want to do in terms of how they see their technology being used in an effective way, right? So
exactly, yeah. It's again pointing to the strength of the industry, or however you want to describe it, that there's not really a cut and dried approach. There's still a lot of experimentation going on, and not and more coming out all the time. It's not going to be a this is, here's the technology, here's what it does, the end. It's not going to be a brief fad. It's going to be a feature and an element in how all kinds of projects for education, for business, and personal use are employed going forward, really.
Yeah, and we've got one feature left in our features review for this week, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that up now. That is Wayfair,
Yes.
launching a generative AI app for interior decorating.
Yeah, a perfect example of some of what we were talking about in terms of visual interpretation and of applying generative AI toward business purposes. So in this case, Wayfair is offering a tool where essentially you take a picture of your living room, you upload it, and then you pick from a bunch of different styles of what you might want to make your living room look like. So whether it's modern or farmhouse or perfectly pink as one of the examples as well. And it's a great commerce tool because not only will the generative AI put together a new look for your room based on your actual photo, but it will then list items available at Wayfair for you to purchase. So it helps you imagine what your room could look like, and then it gives you immediate access to the furniture and the rugs and so on that will help you make that happen, make that a reality. And there's definitely a bit of a gimmick element to it. It's not exactly the highest end look to a room, and again, there are limited variations. You can't just type in exactly what you want your room to look like, but the e-commerce element really enhances it and gives a lot of
right.
This just feels very much like a thing that every hardware store and furniture store was going to have at some point.
Oh yeah. We've definitely seen in the past pretty decent success with the augmented reality. See this in your room. Amazon and Wayfair have been doing that for quite a while. So this is kind of the next level of that. I assume that we will see this in Redfin and other places that have pictures of places, that exist in reality. And then it'd say like, see what it would be in a Tudor style 18th century decor, goth or whatever, and then you could like, I just assume that we will be seeing generative AI going pretty hard on that stuff, using both real and imagined things.
Yeah, and it's also, it's the AI being able to identify not only the space of a room, but identify objects within a room so that it can understand like what it needs to take out in order and replace. So it's not just putting a rug on top of a rug, and there's a lot of advanced technology that goes into all of that. But the generative AI element is what really synthesizes it and brings it all together. And I think that's going to be key for a lot of businesses in the future in terms of designing really anything, not just real world spaces, but as we've discussed before, websites and digital products as well.
I agree.
But so of course,
I think we'll see plenty of that in the future. Like I said, the whole real estate market, that's going to be huge with this kind of staging and whatever, staging to the consumer, right, is going to be the thing. So whether it's Wayfair or whether it's some other organization, this idea of like tailoring to the consumer using either what you already know or what they tell you they want, based on a prompt or things like that, is going to be very helpful for both selling more product and just in this consumers deciding what they want space, which, Brett did a big thing months ago with just the was it Bard, right, was what he was using, or maybe it was the ChatGPT when he was using Lowe's to kind of figure out something like back in an older Synthetia. So go check that out. It was right at the beginning of them using the APIs, I believe, was what he was exploring at that use case. But we are moving on because we don't just talk about features, we also talk about other things. And clearly one of the biggest stories this week has been in AI governance. It continues to be a story. It's rolling strong in lots of areas, both in public discourse and within companies themselves and within the government. Everybody is on board with some kind of governance. The question of course, is what. So we're going to talk first about kind of a council that has shown up from the big players.
Yeah, it's has been very much the sort of slightly counterintuitive idea that the OpenAI and these generative AI companies are asking for regulation to be set up, and of course, what they want is regulation that helps their companies, but still accomplishes the goals of safety and so on. And in this case, some of the biggest ones have got together to give a sort of singular voice to that push. So Microsoft and OpenAI and Google and Anthropic have put together the Frontier Model Forum, the Frontier Model being a reference to sort of the cutting edge AI as they describe it. And what they're trying to do is, instead of having multiple disparate voices on what safety looks like for AI and what responsible development looks like, they want to put together the benchmarks and the frameworks for regulation that they believe will fit the responsible governance side of things, while still allowing them to build the products they want to build and offer their customers what they think customers want. And it's not shocking that there's going to be an industry group, but it is telling that they're really focusing on the safety side of things, and the idea that AI is so powerful and so potentially going to play such an important role in how people live, that they want to emphasize that they're going to approach it in a safe way. And they've been running around trying to reassure the public and politicians about that for a long time. I mean, that was what Sam Altman did when he spoke to Congress. It's what we've seen Anthropic's CEO tell Congress just this week.
We're going to talk about that in just a sec, but before we jump to that, I want to talk about two things. One, that image at the top, I love it. It's hilarious. We talked about images before. I'm just going to add it back in just to make my point. But I don't know, what'd you create that with? Because
that was a DALL-E image.
DALL-E, right? That's a great image. So it's just wonderful what we were able to do with the image generators. But the other thing I want to talk about is right here. So at Voicebot, behind the scenes, we do a lot of research, and one of the things we think about heavily is the words people use to describe things. And I think that it's interesting that they're using this idea, frontier model forum. Generally we talk about foundational models. In the past is usually what we've used to describe these models, where that's the foundation, and then on top of these things you're building something. But they're using the term frontier, and I just think that's kind of an interesting play. I think they're trying to nicify the idea, where foundational, I don't know, at least for us in the tech space, to me, it sounds like, Asimov-y kind of like, term, versus frontier makes it seem like, oh, it's a frontier, it's frontier town. Obviously there's plenty of things that can be associated with it, but I just feel like they're trying to, even just in choosing that language, they've already made a decision where they're trying to show this more like benevolent or approachable thing. Well, and that graphic makes it approachable.
Well, I think there's two things. One is that Sam Altman and some of the others in the industry have said they don't like terms like generative AI, and that they think large language models are a very specific thing that don't apply to all the stuff they're doing. But the other thing is that by calling it a frontier, what they're implying is that it almost feels like they're trying to step away a little bit from responsibility by saying, we're not building this, we're discovering it. It's the frontier, it already exists. Right. We're pushing the frontier, we're going past it, but we're not it's not, it doesn't come from us, it's us reporting on what we've seen out there. And it's it's subtle, and I'm not saying that it's even necessarily very deliberate that way on their part, but it is very much what I would take away from it, is that they're trying to imply that it's discovering something and not creating something.
Yes, I agree. They're basically saying this is a space of exploration, right? They're not wanting to admit that, like, oh, also LLM, large language models. If you're a John Q. Public regular person who is just interested in like what's going on, you're going to say AI all the time and not even know. So by having something that's just even a little bit more approachable by people that are less in the know, I think is going to help them in terms of just talking with the public and the public discourse in general. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to point that out because, like I said, we talk about words all the time, and I think your description of that was astute. But of course, we did talk about Congress. So Congress was very busy this week. This is the second time that they've had, members of both corporate and this time they had quite a few scholars joining them. So go ahead, take it away. Let's talk about Congress this week.
Yes, so they had there was a congressional hearing talking about the use of AI, and of course they had Anthropic's CEO Dario Amodei was there, but not just him. It's also the experts in the field who are not necessarily building businesses on it. For instance, a professor at the University of Montreal named Yoshua Bengio, who's considered one of the fathers of modern AI. They had a Berkeley professor, Stuart Russel, who's very much on the cutting edge of research around the technology. And I think that it's good that they're not just limiting themselves to sort of the Silicon Valley AI people. They're looking at the bigger picture because they need to. They have to address all of the potential problems and opportunities that come from this technology. And I think that Congress moves slow and regulators tend to move slow in the US, but elsewhere things are happening more quickly in China and in the EU. And I think that it's a good sign that at least they're taking it seriously, even if it may not be quite at the pace that might be better for the industry as a whole in terms of creating a regulatory framework.
Yeah, I think that just from watching this and the previous thing in its entirety and taking some notes on it, I think just what's remarkable to me is that they are taking this so seriously, and for a political group that has basically, we're not going to get into politics on this, but they don't get along very well typically, and a lot of the hearings have generally been like talking points related garble rather than asking intelligent, tough questions. And outside of the person representing Nashville asking pointed questions about music technology, they generally have been really asking interesting and higher quality questions than we're used to seeing in any of the major televised events about this. So it's just great to see that regardless of where the legislation comes down, which I think we're still a ways from really seeing, they are actually, I think we're going to see legislation on it, which is, unusual. They're moving much faster than they can. Not as fast as the technology, but.
Yes, and honestly, not that there haven't been moments of slightly cringeworthy understandings of technology, but in comparison to some of the social media related hearings that I've seen, it did feel at least like most of the members of Congress and senators at least understood the broad strokes of what they were talking about and not confusing it with something else or thinking it could do things it can't do.
Yeah, if there's a major theme running through a lot of the Senate's side testimonies, it is that they feel that they kind of dropped the ball or maybe miscarried or weren't paying enough attention when social media became a thing, and now they're trying to do their best to at least pay attention in the right way, knowing that I think that they made a little bit of missteps in how they characterize the social media versus the generative AI. But again, this is, as they say, a frontier, and nobody, including us, including all of the people at these companies and scholars everywhere, nobody is 100% certain that things are going to go in any specific direction. So we have to all kind of do our part and pay attention. That's my take on that. So,
No,
and of course, along with that, the Whitehouse also weighed in this week. So if you want to take that away.
Yeah, the timing of this was kind of interesting because they're, as we said, there's a new group of companies, but that was announced this week. But at the end of last week, President Biden brought together not just those 4 companies, but also Amazon, Inflection, Meta, all the, as well as the 4 in the Frontier group, and they discussed sort of broad strokes principles of what responsible AI development looks like, and they all had made a voluntary agreement of what they would do in terms of, I guess, their approach, and saying that they would take it seriously and they would consider these issues. And Biden came out after they had the meeting and explained a little bit about what they had discussed and what the companies had agreed to do, and sort of made it clear that on the political side of things, they are paying attention, taking it seriously, which was, I think is good, and I think it's good that they had not just the companies that are going to be in this new industry group, but also the ones that are going for maybe open sourcing their technology, like Meta, or who are pursuing slightly different angles, like Amazon. I think it's good to know that the big names are. It's good to know that the White House is paying attention, and that they're letting the big companies behind this technology, know that they are paying attention. So hopefully there won't be some of the same issues that have cropped up, honestly, with every sort of new technology in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And I think what's just impressive to me about this and the EU and everything is that people are really trying to act, or at least, in action mode. Whether the end of this comes out with anything is hard to see. My biggest worry is that, we have both the fear mongers talking about this cliff that we're going to go off of, or AGI, and that's really heavy. And then we have this other side where people are talking about all these really lofty, ideal things that AI can or should do for us in medical technology and all this stuff. But I feel like people are missing this like broad kind of area where there's all these, use cases that are kind of in between. And I think it's going to be hard to really clarify what legislation will be useful and helpful and what will stifle innovation, especially, we are in the conversational AI world, and we are talking with companies right and left. And, there's plenty of things that I think they can deal with, but I'm just worried about maybe legislation about future things that may not be as important right now. And I just hope that they continue to take into the perspective some of this wide middle ground and don't fall victim to thinking about those highs and lows.
Yeah, and I think that's why, tying it back to one of the things we talked about earlier in the show about deepfakes and detecting the use of AI. One of the principles discussed by the companies was to, in tandem with their synthetic media creations, the images and videos and so on, but coming up with tools to spot when they're being used. And we've seen, if you go back and watch or read Voicebot, but go back and watch the last few episodes of Gain, you'll see Brett and I discussing several companies that are issuing new deepfake voices and deepfake video tools, and simultaneously coming out with a method for spotting when those tools are used, so that whether it's just their own technology or even on a broader scale, more universal approach, I guess, ensuring that even though deepfakes are getting better, even though we've seen stories of successful scams involving deepfakes, that it's not being that the fight is not being ignored by the creators of these technologies, that they're also working to sort of inoculate people from being tricked by deepfakes. And I think that's a really important element of that agreement.
All right, so it's time for winners and losers of the week. I hope you've thought deeply about this. This is my first time doing it, so I'm going to let you go first, so I have a little bit of time to make my pick. But let's go with losers first.
I'd say losers this week is probably the honestly, there was a lot more winners than losers this week. But if I
Yeah.
had to pick one, I would have to say the the smaller, or I guess the companies that aren't on board with what OpenAI and these other brands are doing in terms of the partnerships. I mean, we're seeing more and more of these partnerships, but some of the companies that have tried to go it alone are having to scramble and pivot. And we talked last week about some of the layoffs going on at some of these companies, and I think that we're going to see a lot more collaboration. So I think the ones that are standing alone are facing some real trouble in the near future. How about yourself? What do you think the loser this week is?
Put me on the spot. You know, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with people who care about detecting AI writing. I think that while OpenAI did, kind of sunset their writing thing, I don't think that they're losers. I think they're just losing a little bit because I think it's kind of like this is one wave in the battle, and there's going to be other people that are picking up the torch and running with it. I think that might be part of what OpenAI was thinking with this. They're thinking we're going to leave that to some of these other startups that have probably a clearer vision of what they're trying to do with this, and so I'm going to go with that.
That's fair.
And now for
What about
winners.
you? Want to start the winner? Do you have one?
Yeah, I'm going to go first. I'm going to say the American people are a winner. Again, my point that the government is functioning both better and faster than normal or ever on this AI issue. Again, we don't know what the outcome is going to be, but anytime that the government is actually functioning properly for the last 10 or 15 years, I think is a great win for Americans. Hopefully the outcome will also be a win, but that is left TBD. So
That's fair. I'm going to go with students in general, not only because of what we were talking about before with Grammarly, but I think that Wayfair is one of those e-commerce sites that is on the cheaper side, or certainly a company I've used when I was younger and trying to stretch a buck. So I think if I had a tool like that, it would have made it maybe a little easier to avoid buying furniture that didn't fit my space. And I think also students are having a moment because there's suddenly a lot more ways for them to get involved with, as you said, the American people side of things. All those interns working for lawmakers who now get to spend a lot of time explaining what the technology is, what it can do, and why they should be concerned about it. I think you're going to get a lot of demand for subject matter experts who are maybe still in their early 20s.
Yeah, in a prior life, I worked for Urban Outfitters, and I will tell you that the back to school season just leads into holiday. It's like the high gear for any retailer. So the fact that they're dropping this now is almost certainly, I would have to say that dorm furnishing is probably their top use case that they're hoping, because that's probably going to be the people that they've done the most research on and think will actually use this and probably put it in 10. And even if it's just like seeing how cute this picture is going to be on the wall, I think that's going to be a high level use case.
Once Target starts doing their own version, suddenly college towns are going to get college dorms are going to get a lot more creative in their decorating, I think.
Yeah, and I think also the buy online and pick up in store is going to win for this. All aspects of retail are probably going to win for this, just because you're going to be able to get that total package. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see standalone companies that are saying like, oh, we can order this from Wayfair and this from Amazon and this from CB2, and then put it all into your dorm room. I will not be surprised if there probably already are startups that we haven't researched that are doing something in that space.
Absolutely. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching. This has been Gain, the Generative AI News. This is our weekly show. Normally myself and Brett Kinsella. This week filled in with the very excellent Andrew Herndon. Andrew, thank you so much. Be sure to check out Voicebot.ai. Be sure to check out the Synthedia newsletter, where Brett goes into very deep, very informative dives on all kinds of generative AI and synthetic media topics. And be sure to join us next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday for the next edition of Gain.
Yeah, and if you didn't make, if you're in the conversation design space and you didn't make it to Unparsed this week, stay tuned, because we did a significant amount of research in the conversation design space, and Brett debuted a lot of that at Unparsed, but there's going to be plenty more coming out in the future. So just stay tuned to voicebot.ai for everything you want to know about the space in this current moment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.